They say every neighborhood has that one guy who takes the HOA too seriously, but ours had Doyle Mason. This man strutted around like he wore a badge, clipboard tucked under one arm, phone always ready to snap pictures. He wasn't elected, he wasn't appointed, he just decided he was the HOA patrol, and last week he crossed a line that Grandpa wasn't about to let slide. Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. It started with the creak of our backyard fence at 5:30 in the morning. I was still groggy pouring cereal when Grandpa, sitting in his rocker on the porch, muttered, "There he goes again." Sure enough, Doyle was scaling our fence like a burglar, phone in hand, snapping photos of Grandpa's tomato plants. He claimed they violated community aesthetics. Can you imagine? A 75-year-old veteran growing tomatoes was apparently a crime against the neighborhood. I wanted to storm out there and confront him, but Grandpa just raised a hand and said, "Patience. Let a fool show himself long enough and he'll write his own ending." That was his way, measured calm, the opposite of Doyle's manic energy. This wasn't the first time Doyle trespassed. Twice before, we caught him poking around near our shed, once even rattling the door like he expected to find contraband. Grandpa reported him to the HOA board, but the president, Linda Clay, brushed it off with a smile. "Oh, Doyle's just enthusiastic. He cares about the neighborhood." Enthusiastic. The man was breaking state trespassing law under NC General Statute 14-159. 13, but the HOA hid behind technicalities, claiming it was internal enforcement. Grandpa wasn't buying it. He called the sheriff's office, and while they sympathized, they explained the gray area. Unless we caught Doyle in the act and pressed charges immediately, it was our word against his. That's when Grandpa hatched his plan. For the next 3 days, he tinkered in the garage, humming old country tunes while I fetched him tools. By the 4th day, our wrought iron gate had a new modification. Low-voltage electric wiring perfectly legal under North Carolina Electrical Code, provided it was marked. Grandpa even posted a bright yellow sign, warning, "Electrified gate. Trespassers will be shocked." And right on schedule, Doyle came prowling again before dawn. Grandpa sat on the porch sipping his black coffee while I crouched by the window, heart thudding. Doyle climbed the fence, boots crunching the gravel, muttering something about violations. The second his gloved hand gripped the gate. Snap, a jolt sent him yelping like a startled dog. He stumbled back, arms flailing, landed in the dirt, and scrambled to his feet, limping toward the street. Grandpa didn't move an inch. He just leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting. That, he said softly, was the sound of justice. The whole street was buzzing. Doyle Mason, limping down Maple Court, had turned into the day's entertainment. Neighbors whispered in driveways, stifling laughter as the self-appointed HOA patrol tried to spin the story. He told anyone who'd listen that Grandpa had installed illegal traps on his property, but most folks knew the truth. Everyone had seen Doyle's antics, snooping in yards, measuring grass with a ruler, even peeking through curtains at night. The man was a menace, and for once, he'd finally gotten a taste of his own medicine. Still, Doyle wasn't about to take the hit quietly. By noon, an emergency HOA meeting was called. I went with Grandpa just to keep things from boiling over, but I should have known it was going to be a circus. Linda Clay, the HOA president, sat at the head of the long table, pearls around her neck, and that permanent fake smile plastered on her face. Doyle sat to her right, arm in a sling for dramatic effect. He pointed at Grandpa like he'd uncovered a crime scene. "This man," Doyle declared, "is endangering the neighborhood. He has rigged up an electrified weapon. That gate nearly killed me." Grandpa didn't flinch. He simply leaned forward, placed a folded piece of paper on the table, and said, "That, Mrs. Clay, is a permit issued under the state electrical code, fully legal, clearly signed, and I posted the required warning notice. Linda tried to wiggle out of it. Illegal or not, it's aggressive. It goes against the spirit of community living. The HOA has the right to regulate installations." Grandpa's voice dropped into that gravelly tone that always made me sit straighter. "Regulate, sure. Trespass, no. North Carolina trespassing statute makes it a crime to enter private property without consent. Doyle has done it 3 times. I'm done warning him. Next time I'll press charges and let a judge sort it out." You could feel the shift in the room. Neighbors who had been silent suddenly nodded. One woman spoke up. Doyle came into my backyard last month to measure my shrubs. I thought I was the only one. Another chimed in. He photographed my kids' bikes and called them an eyesore. The tide was turning, and Doyle's face went redder with every word. Linda banged the gavel, desperate to regain control. This is not the place for accusations. We are discussing Mr. Thompson's. But Grandpa cut her off. No, ma'am, we're discussing Doyle's obsession. You let him run around like he owns the neighborhood, and now he's learned what happens when you step on the wrong porch. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe because the story is only going to get better. Doyle didn't take the humiliation well. After that meeting, he doubled down. For 2 days straight, he circled our block in his dented pickup like a vulture, slowing in front of our driveway as if waiting for the gate to open. Grandpa barely acknowledged him. He just sat on the porch with his old thermos of coffee, eyes fixed like a hawk. On the third night, Doyle couldn't resist. Just past midnight, I woke to the sound of rustling near the gate. I peeked out my window, and there he was, flashlight in one hand, bolt cutters in the other, mumbling curses under his breath. He was actually going to break through. Grandpa was already waiting. From his rocking chair, he pulled out a small handheld remote. "Watch this, kid," he whispered, eyes locked on Doyle. The moment Doyle clamped the cutters onto the steel, Grandpa clicked the remote. Zap! The low hum of the electrified wires surged, and Doyle's body jolted like he just grabbed a live hornet's nest. He yelped, dropped the cutters, and stumbled back into the mud. Grandpa calmly sipped his coffee. Trespassing again, he muttered. Then he pointed his phone, camera already rolling. Every stutter, every curse, every slip in the mud was caught in 1080p. But Doyle didn't stop. Instead, he whipped out his own phone and dialed 911, screaming attempted murder. This lunatic is trying to kill me with an illegal fence. 5 minutes later, red and blue lights washed across the yard. Officers spilled out, hands on their holsters, looking from Doyle, muddy, trembling, clutching his arm, to Grandpa, who sat on the porch like it was just another Thursday night. "Sir," one officer said to Grandpa, "is there an active electrical device on that gate?" "Yes," Grandpa replied evenly. "Registered, permitted, posted with warnings, and recorded. Here's the paperwork." He slid the laminated permit across the porch table without even standing up. Then he handed over his phone, video still playing. The officers watched Doyle climb, cut, and fry himself in full HD. One officer looked up, deadpan. "So you trespassed?" Doyle sputtered. "No, I was conducting an inspection for the HOA." "Inspection?" The other officer raised a brow. At midnight, with bolt cutters, the law couldn't have been clearer. Under state code, Doyle was guilty of criminal trespassing, vandalism, and attempted theft, and his 911 stunt that was a false police report. Another charge stacked on top. The officers cuffed him right there in front of the glowing gate. Doyle shouted about conspiracies, about Grandpa being a danger to the community, but nobody listened. Neighbors had gathered at the commotion, and for the first time, they weren't whispering. They were clapping. Grandpa leaned back in his chair, nodded at me, and said, "Sometimes, son, justice just needs a little electricity." Doyle, meanwhile, sat in the back of the cruiser, drenched in sweat, his reputation in shreds, and his HOA badge confiscated on the spot. The gate he thought he could climb had turned into the very thing that destroyed him. Because when you mess with a man like Grandpa, you don't just lose the fight, you light the fuse for your whole HOA to come crashing down.